Welcome to the Food Bank of Central New York's Meal Package Guidelines for Food Pantries presentation. During this presentation, we'll review the mission of the Food Bank of Central New York, the mission of the Hunger Prevention and Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as HIPNAP, as well as a brief overview of the HIPNAP program, an overview of the HIPNAP meal standards and minimum meal guide, and how it corresponds to Food Bank of Central New York's minimum food guide, the point system for distributing food, some commonly confused food items, and lastly, how to promote slow-moving products. Leading the effort to eliminate hunger in our region by partnership with others in our community through education, advocacy, and distribution of nutritious food is the mission of Food Bank of Central New York. This mission supports our vision of a community where everyone has access to nutritious food and no one is hungry. HIPNAP is dedicated to improving the health and nutrition status of people needing food assistance in New York State. Through partnership with HIPNAP, supplemental funding and nutrition technical assistance are provided to food banks, emergency food programs such as food pantries, soup kitchens, and shelters, as well as to other nonprofit organizations. Funded by state and federal funds from New York State Department of Health, HIPNAP administers annual food and operation support grants which supply supplemental funding to food banks and their HIPNAP-eligible partner agency programs. The HIPNAP program meal standards are based off the dietary guidelines for Americans to provide healthy food options which promote fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, low-fat dairy, and whole grains. The meal standards assist households towards meeting current dietary recommendations. There is a guideline for the minimum amount of food to be provided, but programs are encouraged to provide a more generous pantry package designed to meet My Plate guidelines. Why have meal standards in food pantries? Well, one reason is predictability. Guests or neighbors know what to expect. They can have a balanced meal in each pantry package and meals served. It supports sustainability. Maintaining inventory at the pantry is easy when the foods are organized by food groups. Meal package standards meet the required minimum nutrition guidelines. And equality. The meal standard system makes sure every individual receives at least the minimum regardless of household size. To help meet our mission, Food Bank of Central New York applies these standards to all our partner food pantries and meal sites. This is an image of Food Bank's minimum food guide for a 5-day and 15-meal pantry package, which most of you, if not all of you, may be familiar with. This guide utilizes the HIPNAP minimum meal standard to assure an equal distribution of food. Under the HIPNAP food guide, the dairy and protein groups are combined into the one group proteins. This protein group includes animal and plant-based proteins as well as dairy and dairy alternatives. Essentially, the meal guide has 3 food groups then: fruits and vegetables, proteins, and grains. Minimum meal standard versus minimum meal guide. The HIPNAP minimum meal standard and Food Bank minimum food guide are the minimum total amount of food by food group that can be offered per household size, whereas the HIPNAP minimum meal guide is the minimum amount of servings of each of the 3 food groups that is provided for each day for each individual in the household when following the HIPNAP meal standard guide and or Food Bank minimum food guide. In this slide and the next 2 slides, I'm going to talk about the minimum meal guide based on food groups. The minimum meal guide for fruits and vegetables provides 6 servings of fruits and vegetables per person per day. The minimum meal guide for proteins is 28 grams of protein per person per day. To give you an example of some of the protein content in foods that are commonly found in the food pantries, I have eggs, which are 12 grams of protein, beans, which are 6 grams of protein, and a 5.3 ounce container of Greek yogurt contains 12 grams of protein. The minimum meal guide for grains is 6 servings of grains per person per day. Points are a guide to help pantries meet the required minimum meal food guide. Programs can increase the amount of points available. The minimum does not mean that it is the most you can distribute. It means this is the minimum amount of food to be offered. Feel free to distribute more food equally to households if you are able to do so. Please remember, the minimum points must be offered, but guests can refuse to take any food they will not use or cannot eat. Assigning point values to food items, we use the nutrition facts label to determine the number of servings in a package. The points are assigned based on the number of servings. 4 servings equal 1 point. You can always assign lower point values to items, but please avoid assigning point values above a 3 to any foods. This would be any food who has a serving size of 12 or more. Now we'll walk through some nutrition facts labels and determining the point value of foods. This slide, I'm using animal proteins and plant-based meat alternatives as an example. The nutrition facts label on the right is from a pound of hamburger. If we look at the servings per container, there's 4 servings. As I mentioned previously, 4 servings equal 1 point, so this pound of hamburger would have a point value of 1. Please note, though, that mixed food items cannot be considered a protein if they have less than 7 grams of protein per serving. Soups such as chicken noodle soup or vegetable beef soup, those macaroni and beef or cheese products, if they have a protein of 7 grams of less per serving, they cannot be considered a protein. This is a can of tuna, and I wanted to bring this to light because there have been changes in the nutrition facts label. The nutrition facts label changed in 2016, but the date that all food manufacturers had to comply with the new requirements was not until January of 2021, so right when we were in the midst of COVID. By law, the serving size is now based on the actual amount of food someone is eating in a serving and not what the recommended serving size is. So previously, the 5-ounce cans of tuna and or chicken would read that they had 2 servings per container because that was the recommended serving size. But because of the change in the law, these cans that are 5 ounces now say 1 serving on them because typically when a person sits down, they will eat essentially the whole can as 1 serving. We always want to confirm the serving size per can on the items coming in because the labels may change. Typically, the fruit and vegetable cans stay the same, the pounds of hamburger stay the same, but the tuna and the chicken, and I will also note that the mandarin oranges went through some labeling changes. So please always confirm whether they're saying they're 1 serving size or 2 serving sizes, because that's going to affect the point value assigned to that food. So for example, this 5-ounce can of tuna only has 1 serving, which means 4 of these cans would need to be offered to equal 1 point. In this shelf-stable product, which is a can of fruit or vegetable, we notice that there's only 3.5 servings on the can. This would count as 1 point. In regards to fresh fruits and vegetables, These will vary in points based on size. Use your best judgment to determine what amount of product would equal 4 servings. And again, 4 servings equals 1 point. Those items that may be difficult or challenging would, I'm thinking large cabbage, winter squash, which can vary in size. Just use your best judgment. Some commonly confused items. We discussed the soups and canned meals. They can only be considered a protein if they have 7 grams of protein or more per serving. Beans, canned or dry, can be marketed as a protein and a vegetable, but they can only count for one or the other. They cannot count as both a protein and both a vegetable. Juice, only 100% juice counts as fruit. Cranberry sauce cannot be counted as a fruit. It must be distributed as a free item. Items that do not qualify for points are items that are high in sugar, such as jams and jellies. As I mentioned previously, the jellied cranberry sauce, maple syrup, and pancake syrup. Juices made from concentrate do not qualify for points. Mixed food products with less than 7 grams of protein per serving, again, do not count as points. Margarine and butter, condiments such as mustard, ketchup, coffee creamer, salad dressing, cooking oil, any of those do not count as points. If you have slow-moving products, promote them as a special. Offer it as 2 for 1, or take one, get one. Or consider reducing the point value on the item. In summary, HIPNET provides supplemental funding to food banks, emergency food programs, and other nonprofit organizations. HIPNET meal standards and minimum meal guide ensure that individuals accessing emergency food programs receive a fair and consistent nutritious meal package while supporting client choice. Following the points guide assures that pantries are meeting the minimum meal package. It's always encouraged when possible to provide more. More information can be found on the Food Bank website under the Partner Agency tab. Also at www.health.ny.gov/prevention/nutrition/HIPNET/. Thank you. Any questions can be directed to Food Bank of Central New York's Community Nutrition Manager at 315-437-1899.